Greetings, Pokey fans! Michael here, and recently on Pokemon Day, we got the results of the Pokemon of the Year poll. In case you missed what that was, in the first half of February, for about a week, there was a poll run on Google where people could vote for the Pokemon of the Year. Each Google account could vote once each day for one Pokemon from each generation. So a total of a maximum of 8 votes per Google account once each day for the duration of the poll. Side note, Meltan and Melmetal were lumped in with Generation 8. It said Galar/unknown origin, and Meltan and Melmetal apparently count as unknown origin. But now we have the results for this voting, and the top 10 Pokemon in order from 10 to 1 are Gengar, Gardevoir, Rayquaza, Garchomp, Sylveon, Umbreon, Charizard, Mimikyu, Lucario, and Greninja. These 10 are the most popular Pokemon worldwide according to this poll. But we were given more information than just the top 10 finishers. If you go to Pokemon's website, you'll find that they gave us the top 30 overall and the top 30 from each region, along with the exact amount of votes each Pokemon got. While we don't have any information past the top 30 for each region, it's still a ton of really valuable information that can help us really get an accurate idea of which Pokemon are most beloved by the fandom as a whole. I decided to analyze all of this data and information to find 10 insights about Pokemon that the Pokemon of the Year poll taught us. I did this by creating a spreadsheet of all of the information, with red indicating a starter Pokemon, green for a fully evolved pseudo-legendary, blue for legendary Pokemon, with darker blue indicating mythical Pokemon. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and let's get started with the first insight. Number 1, what is the best starter evolutionary line? Side note, I should mention right up front that I'm going to use the terms best and worst interchangeably with most popular and least popular. Best and worst are just easier to say. Now we know that Greninja is not only the most popular starter, but it's the most popular Pokemon. However, Froakie is all the way down as the 30th most popular Kalos Pokemon, and Frogadier didn't break the top 30. Noticing that got me curious. Which starter evolutionary line is the most popular consistently for all 3 members? And there's actually only 3 candidates: the Cyndaquil line, the Trico line, and the Fennekin line. These are the only starter evolutionary lines where all 3 members made it into their region's top 30. First, the Cyndaquil line. Typhlosion got 4th in Johto with about 35,000 votes. Then Cyndaquil got 8th with about 28,000, and Quilava got 25th with 10,000. For my personal favorite, the Trico line, Sceptile got 4th in Hoenn with about 38,000 votes and is the only member of these 3 lines that made it into the top 30 overall. Then Grovyle got 24th with 10,700 votes, and Trico got 26th with 9,300. And finally, the Fennekin line, which I cannot believe is so popular. Fennekin got 14th in Kalos with 13,500 votes, Delphox 17th with about 10,900, and Braixen took 18th with less than 100 votes fewer than Delphox. Totaling the votes for all of these lines, the Fennekin line came in last place of these 3 with about 35,000 votes, then was the Trico line with about 60,000, and then was the Cyndaquil line with over 73,000 votes. Therefore, the Cyndaquil evolutionary line is the best starter evolutionary line as a whole. By the way, I should mention some people could consider this ranking method unfair because the different generations got very different amounts of total votes in their top 30. Kanto had over 700,000 total votes, whereas Unova only had about 530,000. And the different other generations ranged in between those. However, this doesn't really impact things because if you take the starters' votes as a percentage of their region's total votes, the ranking is still the same. The Cyndaquil line is still on top with about 11%, then Trico in second with about 8.6%, and then the Fennekin line with 5.5%. The next insight is the opposite of the first, that being number 2, what is the worst starter evolutionary line? The easiest way to figure this out is to see which evolutionary lines did not have a single member make it into their region's top 30. There ended up being 2 of them, the Tepig line and the Chespin line. Tepig, Pignite, Emboar, Chespin, Quilladin, and Chestnut do not appear once on the entire spreadsheet. This makes them effectively tie for the worst starter evolutionary line, since, as I mentioned, we don't have any data past the top 30, so we don't know their rankings. We just know they're the only lines that didn't have a single member make it into the top 30. I honestly think this is kind of weird. Like, okay, Tepig I get. Emboar sucks and it gets a lot of hate, so therefore that's going to spread to the rest of its evolutionary line. But I was kind of surprised by Chespin. Yeah, Quilladin is terrible, but I've always thought Chespin was really cute and well designed, and Chestnut I've always thought was fine, you know? I guess I'm just surprised that not even Chespin made it into the top 30. Maybe Greninja's resounding success really hurt the Chespin line. Speaking of Greninja, that's the focus of our next insight. Number 3, the sheer size of Greninja's success. We already know that Greninja is the most popular starter and the most popular Pokemon of all of them. That has been made very clear. But what you may not have realized is just how well it did, because it's kind of absurd. Greninja garnered over 140,000 votes. That is an enormous amount. It is almost 40,000 more votes than second place, which was Lucario. Over 22%, so over 1/5 of all the votes casted to the top 30 Kalos Pokemon went to Greninja. Greninja got more votes than all of the top 30 Johto starters got combined. And this is also true for Sinnoh, Unova, and Galar starters. I think a big reason for Greninja's huge success is its popularity in Japan. If you didn't know, back in 2016, a similar poll was run where you voted for your favorite Pokemon, but it was only run in Japan. And Greninja won that poll as well. I think Greninja's healthy popularity here in America, combined with its enormous popularity in Japan, is what caused it to get so many freaking votes. But what about the flip side of Greninja? Since we know Greninja is the most popular fully evolved starter, I want to know the opposite. Number 4, the worst fully evolved starter. 5 of the 8 generations had all 3 fully evolved starters make it into their region's top 30. Kanto, Hoenn, Sinnoh, Alola, and Galar. The regions that do not are missing 1 each. Meganium from Johto, Emboar from Unova, and Chestnut from Kalos. Therefore, these 3 are the worst fully evolved starters. As I mentioned in number 2, we don't have any data past the top 30, so we can't know how they rank compared to each other. But since they're the only 3 that didn't make it, these 3 are effectively tied for the worst. Now let's keep up this alternating pattern of best or worst. So number 5, what is the best generation of starters overall? I started thinking this because while Greninja was incredibly successful, Chestnut didn't make it into the top 30. So is Kalos really the best generation of starters just because Greninja did so well? There's lots of ways to calculate this, but I think the best way to do it is the average. This will reward generations where all of the starters performed reasonably well over generations where one did really well and the other ones kind of sucked. First, I'll do just the fully evolved starters. I total up the votes for all of that generation's fully evolved starters, then divide it by 3. This way, any fully evolved starters that didn't make it into the top 30 count as 0. After doing this, Kalos has the highest average with over 50,000 votes, despite Chestnut not even being in the top 30. Greninja really did crush this to an extreme scale. Okay, so what if we do all members of an evolutionary line? You total up the votes for base form, middle form, and final form, then divide it by 9. Therefore still counting ones that didn't make the top 30 as 0. Doing this makes Kanto the highest with an average of about 23,000, where Kalos has fallen to second place with 20,000. Hoenn and Alola aren't that far behind with about 19,300 each. Now, while this could be the final answer, Kanto is the best generation of starters, it doesn't take into account the amount of votes each generation got. I covered this earlier in the video, but it varies wildly. So I think to make it a bit more fair, we should look at the percentage, which is a pretty easy calculation to do. You just take that region's average starter votes and divide that by that region's total votes. And doing so makes things interesting. Doing so has made Alola take first place with 3.23%, followed by Kanto at 3.19%, then Kalos at 3.18%. A super tight race for first place. The other generations aren't as close. So depending on the method that you like the most, the region with the best starters is either Kalos because Greninja did so well, Kanto because they got the most total votes, or Alola because they got the best percentage of their region's votes. Heck, an argument could actually be made for Hoenn as well, because they had the most number of starters make it into their region's top 30. It was all 3 base forms, all 3 fully evolved forms, and Grovyle, thus totaling to 7. Every other region had at most 6. I'm sorry this answer isn't as cut and dry as a lot of the other ones, but as you could probably tell, this analysis was the most complicated. All right, enough starter stuff. Let's move on to some other interesting insights. The first of which is number 6, mythical Pokemon outshined legendary Pokemon. And I should clarify immediately that I consider mythical Pokemon to be a subset of legendary Pokemon, not a wholly different group. There were 21 mythical Pokemon involved in this poll. Zarude was not a part of it because it was not announced until the poll was released. And of those 21, 17 made it into their region's top 30. That is over 80%, which is wildly impressive. They did well compared to non-mythical legendary Pokemon as well. Across all legendary Pokemon, there are 84, and mythicals make up 21, which is exactly 25%. However, in the top 30 of each region, mythicals made up 17 of the 45 total legendaries, which is over 37%. They just did really well compared to other legendaries, and honestly, compared to other groups as a whole. I think this is fascinating because for me, I don't really care about most mythical Pokemon because in the games, you never really get a chance to use them. You get handed it in a Pokemon Center, toss it in your box, and probably never use it again. But I suppose their prevalence and prominence in the movies really bumped up their popularity a lot. On the same topic of mythical Pokemon, our next insight is number 7. What are the worst mythical Pokemon? For a group that did so well, we should take a look at its members that didn't do too hot. The 4 mythical Pokemon that did not make it into their region's top 30 and are therefore kind of a 4-way tie between the worst mythical Pokemon are Phione, Manaphy, Volcanion, and Magearna, which honestly makes sense to me as a group. Phione and Manaphy are the same thing, Magearna is Metal Diancie, and Volcanion is just one ugly dude. The next insight is another worst of something, that being number 8, the worst pseudo legend. Now overall, the pseudo legendary Pokemon did well. Every single fully evolved pseudo legend made it into their region's top 30. However, there was one that severely underperformed compared to the others. The exceptional 3 were Tyranitar, Garchomp, and Dragapult, each of which got over 55,000 votes each. The next tier down was the 30 to 40,000 range, which included Dragonite, Metagross, Hydreigon, and Goodra. Below that was Salamence with about 25,000, but to be fair, it had to split pseudo voting points between itself and Metagross. And then there's Kommo-o, with a bit under 13,000 votes, just slightly over half of the second to last place Salamence. It got 17th in Alola, while Salamence got 12th in Hoenn, and all the others got into their region's top 10. Kommo-o is the least popular pseudo-legend Pokemon of all of them, and to me, that makes sense. Because it's ugly. Next is number 9. The top 10 ranking was close. While Greninja, Lucario, Mimikyu, and Charizard blew everyone out of the water, with 4th place Charizard having about a 27,000 vote difference between it and 5th place Umbreon, the rest were close. Umbreon and Sylveon were just over 1,000 votes apart, so they easily could have swapped places. Then there's 7th through 10th place, and all 4 of them were less than 1,700 votes apart. 7th place Garchomp got 61,887, while 10th place Gengar got 60,214. Those 2, along with Gardevoir and Rayquaza, easily could have been swapped around, but they were all firmly in the top 10. The drop from 10th place Gengar to 11th place Dragapult was 2,241. So that single place gap was larger than the 3 place gap from 10th to 7th place. And finally, we'll end things on a silly one. Number 10, Pokemon fans like Halloween. Why do I say that? Well, that's because 5 of the 8 generations' most popular Pokemon was a dark or ghost type. Umbreon won Johto, Chandelure won Unova, Greninja won Kalos, Mimikyu won Alola, and Dragapult won Galar. And this applies to the overall ranking as well. Of the top 30 Pokemon from every region, 11 of them were ghost or dark type. Greninja, Mimikyu, Umbreon, Gengar, Dragapult, Tyranitar, Aegislash, Chandelure, Decidueye, Zoroark, and Hydreigon. I love this insight because it's kind of crazy that just 2 types made up over a third of the top 30 overall Pokemon. That's pretty cool. The Pokemon fandom is spoopy. Thank you so much for watching, and an extra special thanks to my patrons over on Patreon, who are helping support me in a way independent of fluctuating YouTube ad revenue. If you want to help support me in the same way and get some cool perks in exchange, the link is in the description below. Also, if you want to check out some more of my fun Pokemon content, I recommend these videos here. All right, that's all I have for now. So until next time, give hands. Gotta catch them all.